Quick announcement. I want to take a moment to talk to you about our brand new and very exciting sponsors called PocketNet.app. Mass media and Silicon Valley's censorship of conservatives has gone into overdrive lately if you hadn't noticed, and that's why I want to tell you about a new social network that is the answer to this suppression. PocketNet.app is a first social network that has no corporation or central server. It works like a network of equal nodes, kind of like how Bitcoin does, so it's very difficult to shut it down or censor it. Only users decide which content is appropriate for them to see, which is very nice in this day and age. Also, viewers of this channel get a special offer if you try it today. When you sign up through my referral link, which is right below in the description of this video, you will get a bonus of 5 Pocket Coin. So go to PocketNet.app today to join now and receive your free bonus. Thanks for your time, and now on to the show. Hello and welcome back to No Bullshit. Today we return to talking about one of the biggest film and TV franchises in the world. Star Wars is the talk of the town again this week. And with just a few days left until the release of the long-anticipated The Rise of Skywalker movie coming later this week, well, needless to say, the conversations about things are peaking online. But not all of the takes on this are the best, of course. And in particular, the pro-Star Wars shills in the mainstream media really seem to be working overtime recently, trying to prop up and defend this new movie before it even has a chance to come out. I think with the previous movies like The Last Jedi going so badly and then the Solo spin-off film losing money, well, it's pretty obvious after 2 very significant failures, the Star Wars side of things is getting a bit gun-shy, and they really should be too. I know I would be making sure everything is in order and all my ducks are in a row if I was a Disney Star Wars shill right now too. Thankfully, I'm not. That's why I'm just being casual about things and also, at the same time, highly skeptical going into this. I'm sure there's going to be some issues with the new film, but it also could be good and might be enjoyable like the previous Star Wars film from the director who's making the new one, J.J. Abrams. Yes, but while Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker might have a chance to redeem itself here, many shills are jumping the gun now and trying to justify the heavy criticism they see coming at them soon. And they're doing this in some of the worst ways possible. For example, a terrible trend we've seen going along with this recent wave of new reboots, sequels, and spin-offs of everything, along with the heavily increased need to turn back to big-name tentpole franchises like this, well, all that together has produced a funny side effect. When fans inevitably get excited about these kinds of things, and sometimes they oftentimes get disappointed or upset, well, the new thing to do when that happens is to attack the fans and call us fanboys or even deem us sexist or racist trolls who shouldn't be taken seriously, at least according to the mainstream media, who is obviously getting paid off by Disney and Star Wars in one way or another. For our first example of this, let's turn to the biggest shills there are in the entire mainstream media, CNN of course. They love pushing liberal propaganda and social justice warrior sympathetic things all the time, like what Star Wars has become in recent years, so CNN coming out with an article like this really shouldn't be too surprising. It's called The Rise of Skywalker Takes Flight After the Rise of the Star Wars Trolls. Sounds like they're using the tried and true tactic of attacking your detractors directly, trying to discredit them personally instead of actually addressing their points or criticisms. This is typically called ad hominem in arguments or debate settings, and while it sometimes can make a point, and it's not always identified properly, but regardless, it's definitely a deflection tactic that's being used right here. Calling the critics of your movie trolls is also just 1 or 2 steps away from when you start calling us fanboys, basement dwellers, neckbeards, and then eventually we're even deemed sexist and racist too. Just wait. They're basically throwing any insult they can at people like us, because that's what happens when media companies and their shills get on the defensive. Let's go ahead and see what else they have to say here though and see where this whole thing goes. Star Wars has always enjoyed a strong bond with fans, which has become one of its defining features. Yet as The Rise of Skywalker brings the original saga to a close, the rise of trolls threatens to fundamentally change that relationship. The backlash against The Last Jedi, the 8th movie in this particular series, turned inordinately vitriolic. While there are legitimate questions about how representative those voices are, and indeed what role Russian trolls and political provocateurs played in dragging the comments into the sewer, the cacophony from social media has at times made it easier to simply tune out those voices rather than engage them. It's worth noting that this appraisal comes from someone who harbored plenty of misgivings about The Last Jedi. In contrast to much of the critical establishment, some of the reasoned complaints about the film and the choices made by writer-director Rian Johnson to these ears made perfect sense. Okay, wow, sounds like this CNN writer is trying to ride the fence a little here. He wants us to believe he's not biased, so he half-heartedly acknowledges some of the criticism of The Last Jedi. But then he also compliments it and clearly takes a biased and pro-Star Wars side. I mean, the guy even seems to be blaming Russia for some of the movie's hate. A classic liberal move too, since they seem to blame Russia for everything, especially when they lose or fail, like when the Star Wars The Last Jedi movie failed, or when the 2016 presidential election was lost by Hillary, and that's when Trump won, of course. In addition, I would dare to say that many of the criticisms of The Last Jedi are pretty much undeniable at this point. You could even say they're somewhat objective, at least according to people like me and likely many of you watching this. For example, firstly, the movie was way too long, 2 hours and 30 minutes long, which is 30 minutes longer than any other Star Wars movie. And it also had characters who basically accomplished nothing by the end of the film. They just dealt with problems, mostly caused by their incompetence, for about 2.5 hours. And then the movie stopped, not getting anything done other than wasting our time. Finally, the overt and heavy-handed pro-feminist stuff in the movie definitely sealed its fate as being a disaster and a failure. Not only were both the major leaders of the hero's resistance group women, they also implied that these two women, Princess Leia and Holdo, well, they were supposed to be in some kind of lesbian relationship. Not to mention, Holdo, the newer character, she was a literal pink-haired feminist who wore an outfit that looked like a prom dress for some reason. The tone, however, became absurdly ugly, lashing out in ways that exhibited a loss of perspective, forgetting that this is a fantasy controlled by a major corporation, there to be enjoyed, debated, or disappointed about as such, but one over which no fan can claim personal ownership, however much time, money, and energy they invest in it. Johnson said then, and more recently in a GQ interview, that such voices represent a small subset of the overall pool. Still, writing in Esquire last year, Matt Miller lamented a loud section of Star Wars fans have become tragically synonymous with hate and bigotry. A study by Morton Bay, a research fellow at USC's Annenberg School for Communication, examined social media and found evidence of deliberate, organized political influence measures disguised as fan arguments about The Last Jedi, in much the way outside elements have sought to further polarize political discourse. That's troubling to the extent it's true, but it only stokes the sense that abusive quadrants of fandom don't speak with one coherent voice, can't be mollified, and there's not much sense in trying. Well, I think we're just talking about two different extremes here, and one's not really any better than the other. I know it may seem like I'm an extreme Star Wars or Last Jedi hater, but really, I'm far from that. I'm very much in the middle myself, even though I mostly hated the movie, and I've railed against it repeatedly, like here. But the real extreme on my side are the people who say stuff like it's the worst movie of all time and it ruined their childhood or something. That, or the special kinds of hyper-focused people who say, make a 2 or 3 or 4 hour long review and tear things down endlessly online. Sure, The Last Jedi probably even deserves some bad reviews like that, but I personally can't sit through that much time. Not about just one movie, and watching someone's over-the-top end of days apocalyptic kind of hatred for Star Wars now, it certainly can get a bit much. But the thing is, most detractors of the series aren't in that extreme at all. Most of us are much more calm, collected, and still intensely focused on being anti-Disney Star Wars like me. But the shills in the media sure do want to try their best to lump all of the detractors together into the same group so that we look just as far gone as our extremists. And that's because they want to slander us all, dubbing us all trolls here, in an effort to make any and all anti-Star Wars talk in the public seem as if it's invalid and too much, when really it's not. And on the flip side, the other side of this coin has similar varying membership too. While most of the pro-Star Wars people are still closer to the middle, many are also on the extreme on their pro side as well. And the way reporters like this CNN one and others, the way they lie and cheat and misrepresent to try and make this bullshit look good, well, that's obviously the worst side to be on. Because while the Star Wars detractors are upset with the films and the franchise for good reasons that are based on the bad choices made by Disney, well, the pro-Star Wars side is usually just supporting Star Wars because they're getting paid to, or they're just blindly following along the series, refusing to admit anything is ever wrong because they're biasly in love with it, and they're not able to take off their nostalgia blinders. With all that said, I hope you can see why the pro-Star Wars side, the shilling side, is much worse. It's because they're lying and they're supporting the series for other reasons, which have little to do with the content and its quality. Then, the anti-Star Wars people, on the other hand, they just have one main goal usually. We want good Star Wars movies and products, and our criticisms are mostly rooted in trying to make that happen if we can. But instead of acknowledging that, the Star Wars shills lie and say we're racist bigots and assholes, even though we're really not. Next, we're going to move on to another article with a similar anti-fan angle, and this is actually coming from a writer who was referenced in this previous CNN article. That Matt guy from Esquire, well, he's got another new article at Esquire, and it's called "It Doesn't Matter If Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker Skywalker is good or bad, toxic fans will try and destroy it. If you say so, buddy. I think if a movie is good, people will express that they like it and it will do well because of that. And sure, there are some haters out there who will quote unquote try and destroy it, but I think most critics I watch and respect, they can be reasonable and humble and honest about things too. For example, Red Letter Media is one of my favorite movie review channels, and they've also been extremely well known for their criticisms of Star Wars. They've railed against Star Wars movies for years, but when they like something in the series, they will still admit that too. Like when they said The Force Awakens was a pretty good movie for the most part. Not in those specific words, but they seem to like it a lot. And sure, they had complaints about it too, but it's not like they can't also admit when something's good as well. Most critics can do that. So really, when this article says the fans are toxic and are going to try and destroy it either way, well, I think that's just another way for these Star Wars shills to try and defend this new movie before it even comes out. They know there's going to be heavy criticism for it, probably because it's going to have lots of issues with it too. But instead of tempering expectations in an honest or fair way, Matt the Esquire guy here is trying to mislead and misrepresent things in a sort of sneaky way, which will make future criticism look like it was going to be inevitable. Thus, most of the criticism will seem not valid, and people should still watch the movie and ignore the reviews and just go see it. In late November, a stranger tweeted at me to share how the movie Knives Out ended. This tweet revealed the answer of the whodunit in Rian Johnson's new movie with the hashtag #SpoilKnivesOut. I had already seen this movie, so no harm done to me personally, but the tweet was a pretty good example of the classically moronic tactics employed by toxic Star Wars fans to annoy and sometimes even harass the people they disagree with. Because this person believed Rian Johnson had ruined Star Wars, a sci-fi property that this fan seemed to feel he had sole ownership of, he must ruin Johnson's movie for everyone else. Tweeting spoilers just to be rude is one of the more tame tactics I've seen Star Wars trolls use over the years. In reaction to my writing about Star Wars, I've been on the receiving end of calls for me to be fired, hour-long videos breaking down my articles, homophobic slurs, racist slurs, intimidation of my partner who appeared in images on my Instagram, and even death threats. Sounds like this guy's an SJW for sure. And aw, boo-hoo, people were mean to you on the internet. Welcome to 2019, buddy. This guy acts like he's never been on the internet before. If you can't take online criticism though, there's a pretty easy way to fix it. Turn off your internet or social media. Or perhaps maybe you're not cut out for an internet writing gig at Esquire if this is the kind of feedback that triggers you. And for the record, you're not special here either, Matt, and neither of these supposed Star Wars trolls attacking you are special either. Funny how this guy calls them trolls just like that last CNN article did, and that article also quoted this guy. It's a very incestuous situation when you're dealing with mainstream media news writers. And really, everyone who makes content online faces backlash like this, like what this guy's crying about. And if you end up being even mildly popular, you'll get people trying to hate on you or clout chase you all the time. In addition, this so-called toxic behavior is also not unique to Star Wars fans. Any fandom can lash out at writers and creators they don't like. Could be Marvel movie fans or Superman ones or even the Batman fans or something. So both sides of this equation are pretty typical if you think about it. And this Esquire writer and his whining seems rather overblown looking back at it. Also, I don't understand this whole the fanboys think they have sole ownership of Star Wars thing. The last article said so much too, and this guy's repeating it. And I've seen a few other Star Wars shills use this same line as well. I think they're all getting talking points from Disney. But this line in particular makes zero sense to me. I think we all know Star Wars is owned by Disney. We don't think we own the franchise. So us making complaints or demands of the franchise doesn't imply we think we own it now. And the real owners, they should actually be listening and trying to give fans like us what we want anyway. So sure, Disney has every right to make whatever Star Wars movies however they want, but the point detractors are really trying to make is this is not what they should be making, and it's not how it should be done. In the end, I want to finish by briefly referencing one more article from Vanity Fair about Star Wars, because although this article appears to be admitting that The Last Jedi wasn't the best based on this title, and it's saying J.J. Abrams, the director, gets why some fans didn't like The Last Jedi, but at the same time, the writer of this does quickly turn on the fans, calling the anti-The Last Jedi people racist, which is another classic accusation thrown at people who don't bend the knee to Disney or to liberals. And it looks like this racist claim is linked to another story about how Kelly Marie Tran got backlash from her role in The Last Jedi and had some drama about it too. She was an actress who got negative comments because her character in The Last Jedi was terrible. Tran eventually left all social media too, which led to pro-Star Wars shills developing a harebrained scheme and excuse like this. Remember, we still have never seen any proof that racism or backlash from The Last Jedi was the reason why Kelly left Instagram or social media in the first place. But Star Wars media shills will happily assume that was true because it helps them mount these anti-fan arguments, and it helps them portray us as trolls, even though we can see that is clearly not the case. What do you guys think? Are the Star Wars media shills afraid because they know the new movie is going to be bad? Are you going to see The Rise of Skywalker this week too? Comment your thoughts on everything below, and if you want me to see the movie and do a big review for you guys, make sure you hit like on this video. If we get, say, 5,000 likes, I'll do a big Star Wars rundown later this week. Thanks for your time today, and now have a good one, guys.